Welcome back to part 2 of our interview on the red couch. Right, so if you look at the stories, they sometimes seem like they are very intense and very dramatic, and they seem like from a quick standpoint, from an outsider, they don't seem like something you can relate to, but actually you can completely relate to the whole thing, just the emotional piece of it.
Sometimes they're really all, I mean, generalizing now, but sometimes opera plots are very complicated and we laugh about it because we try to explain, okay, no, this character is that, no, he left there, wait, no, he came back, no, depending on the librettist, the person who set the play. Mm-hmm. Like if you're going to Marriage of Figaro and you really want to understand the whole thing, it's written by Beaumarchais and it's a French comedy and it's incredibly complex. But the bottom line is the story is very simple. Mm. These two young people want to get married, the servants, the two people who are the count and countess, who are the employers of the servants, are having marital trouble, and the count has his eye on the young servant. How are they going to deal with it all and get married and get him to leave her alone? That's sort of the bottom line. The whole pile of stuff happens within that 3 hours of Figaro, but that's the gist of the story. Now, that's never happened before, has it? Some guy who has a servant is attracted to her and is having marital troubles with his wife. Oh no, that never happens.
That's new.
Right? And that's 200 years old. Pretty cool.
That is cool. Very archetypal storylines.
Yeah.
So, in your role of Norma, she was balancing being a woman, a mother,
high priestess.
High priestess. That's the word I was looking for. So, in your life, you have to balance these incredible performances as an opera star, a wife, a friend. How do you balance it all?
I think my life is pretty uncomplicated compared to people who, women who have companies and kids. We don't have kids. I think that's a huge thing. I think about it often when I'm crazy trying to get a role learned and I'm getting ready to leave. I think, if I had to take children to, soccer practice, that would just, how do they do it, right? So I don't think it's any different at all than what you do or what any other woman, or men for that matter, have to do to manage what we have now. I laugh about it sometimes when I'm giving master classes to young artists because we have all these helps, we have the internet and we have cell phones and we have all these things that are supposed to make our lives so much more manageable, and they do to some great degree, and yet they add a big pile of stress to our lives as well. Mm-hmm. And I would say to these kids, when I started doing singing, we didn't have email, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have any of that stuff. So I'd go to Europe or wherever, or wherever in the country, and we'd have to call, and we'd have phone dates. I was just talking about this with some people this week here.
With your husband?
Yeah. And everybody did this, with your significant other. You'd have a phone date, right? And so we'd say, okay, we're going to go to dinner. You can come in with, I can't, I've got a phone date with my daughter or my husband, or and that was like sacred. People go, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. But then you would talk, with the corded phone, and my husband and I would talk, and we'd try to limit it to an hour because we were spending such ridiculous money on phone bills, like the rent, basically. But, we communicated better then, I think, because it was such a rare and precious thing. And now we still try, but now, I'll go, okay, sweetie, I gotta run, I got this interview, I'm gonna run, I'll call you at my break, okay, you have a good day, I love you, bye-bye. And we talk for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And, I forgot did you mail the visa bill? I just want to remember, okay, great, see you later. And you don't say, I forgot to tell you this monumental thing that I learned in rehearsal the other day. It happens often. And I think my husband and I communicate really well, but it happens to us. So it's something that I talk to with young artists because I say, don't fall into that trap of just because you talk a lot, thinking that you talk well, and I guess an answer to that long-winded answer to your question is, I think perhaps communication is a huge part of balancing our difficult jobs and lives, and because otherwise it just all kind of gets stuck in there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you do such a good job of balancing. I mean, if you're away from your husband during all these rehearsals and the performances, but you still have such a wonderful connection. I mean, you can tell just the way you talk about him. And
he's awesome. That's more him than me, honestly. It really is. He is, he's a very unusual person, and he is demanding in the right ways, demanding emotionally, demanding for all good things. He does not back down. You know, when we first met, I was a very not very communicative Midwest girl. And one of my favorite things would be when we would get into arguments early in our marriage, I'd say, I don't want to talk about this right now. And he's like, I'd say, I have an audition tomorrow. I don't want to talk about this right now. And I remember one time in some argument, he said, you know, Brenda, there's always going to be an audition, and there's always going to be a performance, and there's always going to be a coaching, and there's always going to be a reason you don't want to talk about something. That's not good enough. You know, I mean, really, that's him. So I think I've learned a tremendous amount about that sort of thing from him. And also, you know, after a while, I'm sure you know too, as you watch your friends or my colleagues throughout this is a demanding field in that sense, because being away from the people you love is difficult. And we don't go away for weekend business trips, we go away for weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's something that you really have to get used to deal with. But I've watched a lot of marriages fail and a lot of kids get damaged in, you know, those issues. And so I think I hope, I've learned a little bit about that as well, just from my friends' other experiences in that way.
So in this role, in Turandot, you play the Ice Princess, and suitors come from all over the world, and if they answer the 3 riddles correctly, they win your love, and if they don't, they get their heads chopped off. Is that right?
Kind of. If they answer the 3 riddles, they win the right to marry me. It doesn't necessarily mean they win my love, and that's proven by the fact that when the unknown prince shows up at the top of the opera, he does answer the 3 questions, and I have a cow. I'm like, don't make me do this. You know, there's this big pact, and I say to my dad, don't make me marry this trade. No, I don't wanna. And you know, that's the law. So love, not necessarily, that's the crux of it, right? Whether she's going to actually feel and allow love.
So when you play a part, when you take on a role, do you ever find yourself kind of embodying some of the qualities, or is your husband married to an ice princess right now?
You know what, yeah, that's a really good question. You know, at the beginning, I did that a little bit more. This is an acting question, and it's something that we talk about a lot with young artists, you know, because there's so much, like you say, this is a complete art form, so there's so much involved in learning how to sing and learning languages and learning phrasing and learning different styles of music. Then you have to put acting on it, and you know, and then after that, you know, promoting yourself. There's a ridiculous number of things to deal with. But I always joke and say, look, there are basically 2 schools of acting, and there are of course millions of schools of acting, but they kind of fall into the outside-in school, which is you research and you study and you model and you kind of put those things of that character on yourself and inhabit that. And then there's the inside out school, which is like the Dustin Hoffman school, or there are millions of people, actors like that, who do things, you know, that feel like the character, and they emulate and they try to become that character.
Right.
So I'm an outside in person. And it's neither is no judgment. They're both equally, as long as you get to where you want to go, they're equally you know, valid. But you know, there's that really famous story, I don't know if you do, maybe there's this hilarious joke, I'm paraphrasing horribly, but they were doing that movie, The Marathon Man, Sir Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman, and there's a scene where he has to have dental work without, he's torturing him, right? And so Dustin Hoffman for like days stayed up and didn't shave, and he ran all over the city, and he was, you know, just exhausted, so that when he got into the dentist chair, he just looked like death warmed over. And Laurence Olivier comes in and he said, "What's happened to you?" And Dustin Hoffman said, "Well, you know, I was working really hard to inhabit the character and get ready for the scene." And Sir Laurence Olivier, who is an outside-in person, the opposite, said, "My boy, wouldn't it be simpler to just act?" You know, he couldn't figure it out, right? Because they were so different. All that is to say that since I am an outside-in person, I definitely feel these things when the music is happening and when I'm in rehearsal. And I remember when I did my very first Traviata, which is about a woman who gets consumption and dies of TB. I was getting horrible chest pains while I was rehearsing the 4th act. So there's something, well, you know, I was just feeling like, you know, part of it was posture in the in the show. But no, I definitely, you know, they stay with me, but I'm the kind of gal who, you know, I'm all there all the time in the moment, and then I go home. I wash my face off and go home.
Now there's the secret to a good marriage.
Wash up the paint, the stage makeup, and go home. Yeah.
You have so much energy. I don't know how. I mean, I get the chills. I get like the shivers when I hear you sing.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
And I really do. And I feel like you channel so much energy. Like there's something amazing about the way you sing and the way you bring, I don't even know how to explain it, but I did hear you once say that you felt like you were channeling goddess energy. I think it was in Norma.
I feel like channeling is such a great word, and I think it's such a compliment because the people that I respect, the artists and singers that I respect most are people that do that I feel like really, and by that I mean the energy of the composer or the dead guy. I call him the dead guy. My biography is going to be, honor the dead guy or something like that. Because, we're all this is all they have, right? If you're singing Bellini, Norma, he's not here. Mm-hmm. And all we can do is look at that page and look at those notes and read about the time and listen to the music and, try to do the darndest we can to honor the wishes of that composer. And if they're a great composer and if you have some tools, like if you know kind of what you're doing a little bit, some of that will sometimes sneaks in, and that can be a little bit scary. Yeah, it can be, depending on the emotionality of it and stuff. Because the music that these guys write, it's pretty powerful stuff. So if you're allowed to connect with that, because sometimes in some places you're not. Sometimes depends on the camaraderie of the situation and. Just kind of, for lack of a better word, what you're allowed to do. I have felt often that I wasn't allowed to do what I can. And that's not really fair to say. I wasn't able to tap into what I can do based on the vibe and stuff. I sound so woo-woo now, but if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so if it's a situation in which that's allowed and you feel like you can, and then when
there's
that happens,
an atmosphere for it.
Yeah, like everybody's going for the same thing or they want that to happen or, they're not trying to put you under their thumb. It's like, when that happens, it's the greatest thing. And that's the thing that we all look for all the time. It just happens so fleetingly, and I call it zzz, that's what it is. There it is. It's like a little, one time I was in singing in Edmonton and I came out of the building and I'm always the last of the theater and all my colleagues were standing in the parking lot. It was cold and they were all standing in the parking lot like this. And I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're like, "Look at the northern lights." Like we whispered, like when anyone could hear us, like it mattered. I mean, but it was kind of sacred, And so we all stood there freezing for a little while. And I don't know if you've ever seen them, but it was amazing. And so it was like a curtain on the stage, like a silk light curtain, and it would blow sort of like this. And there was like a spotlight coming up from the bottom. And when it blew back, then the light would shine on this curtain, and it was this beautiful, weird, transient blue-green thing. And we'd all go, "Oh, there was. That's what it is." Like for a second, the curtain blows back and then you have, "Oh, there he was. There was Bellini. Okay, more of that. And then it goes away because you think about it for a second. It can't be conscious, but once people call it the zone or whatever they call it, but once you're in it, it's the only place you want to be.
I am so excited to have the chance to talk to you, and I would love to hear your secret to living a happy and successful life.
Well, I tell you my first thought on that, and it's not a secret, and it's not, I'm sure you've heard it a million times, but it's gratitude. I'm sure you've heard it a million times, and people say it all the time, but I think if you're grateful, if you're actually focused on what you have that you're happy about, you can't be focused on the other stuff that you don't have. And I'm still learning that, but I kind of learned it the hard way by not focusing on that, by being a little bit, early in my career, why is that soprano getting that, and why am I not doing that? And, the typical thing that you can fall into that easily.
Yeah.
And some of the great things that I had were kind of taken away from me. The universe kind of thumps you on the head, and then it raps you on the head, and then it bangs you on the head, and I wasn't listening. And all of a sudden, how come I'm not singing that opera anymore? Because I had been whining about singing that opera so much. And so I started to say, well, perhaps you should focus on the things that are really great. And then the law of attraction comes in, or whatever you think about the most, good or ill, comes to you. So if you're really, it's having gratitude just has so many wonderful benefits, because then all of a sudden the things that you are grateful for, more of that comes to you. I'm a firm believer in that. At least that's what I found happening to me in the recent past. So I'm sticking with it, I think.
I believe in that too, and it's nice to hear from someone like you, you know, to be grateful for everything that we have. Brenda, it has been a pleasure to have you on the Red Couch. I can't wait to see Turandot at Sarasota Opera. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us
on the Red Couch.